we're live.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Apologies for the slight delay. We're having to do things slightly differently, well, quite a bit differently to what we would ordinarily do at this point in the academic year. At the start of an academic year, we would be meeting parents in our hall, and there would be a Key Stage 3 welcome, a Key Stage 4 welcome and a Sixth Form welcome. The Year 12 welcome took place virtually last night, and tonight what I'm going to be doing is hopefully giving you our updates that I'm keen to give you an idea of what's happened over the last few days, the few weeks since the start of the year, and hopefully you'll find that helpful. First slide, please. What I intend to cover today, I'm not covering year-specific issues and priorities. Those are going to be covered by the heads of year, but I'll talk later about that as to how we're going to do that differently this year. So I'm going to be talking about the observations that we've made since the start of term, the positives since the children have returned to school, and the challenges as well. The current context that we're working in, further changes to expect for the academic year, and there's an opportunity throughout the meeting to raise questions as well. Joining me, I've got Mr. Bacon, our Deputy Head, Miss Woodward, our Deputy Head, and I've also got Mr. Bragg, who is our Business Manager. So they are also listening and will be contributing at some point in this meeting. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've had a fantastic, I believe, a real positive start to the new year. The vast majority of students have adapted well to the very many changes that we've introduced. We've inducted students in the first week. Remember, the first week was 2 days, and we went through all of the changes and expectations with them. They've engaged well with their learning, the vast majority of students, and they're clearly pleased to be back. And the teachers are reporting that there is great enthusiasm with learning, and they're really impressed with how students have gone back into the routine of learning in the classroom. They're clearly also enjoying being back with friends and their peers, and attendance has been good, which is really pleasing to see. I know that there was some anxiety, there still is some anxiety about full opening of schools, but it's good to see that our attendance has been above, well, nearly 95%, which is better than most schools. Next slide, please. We took the opportunity very early on day 4 of term to take some feedback from our students, and this is what our students told us. So there's a praise and there's grumble. I'm just sharing with you the headlines of what our students have said to us. So in terms of things that are going well that students have recognised, they recognise that a lot of preparation has been put in place, has taken place in preparation for the full opening. They understand it's not an easy job. They don't always like the changes, but they understand why those changes have been put in place. They know that it's a tricky situation in schools in managing COVID, and also they feel that it's not too different, although there are quite a few changes. They feel well supported by their teachers. It's as normal as possible, they said, in the circumstances that we're working in. In lessons, they say that teachers are supportive, despite the fact that they've been away from the classroom due to lockdown, and teachers are understanding of the difficulties that they've faced during lockdown. They feel, whilst there is quite a bit of restricted movement in school, they feel that lesson changeover is better than what it was previously, and there is less issues to do with punctuality, and as a result they feel that behaviour is much better than what it was previously. They feel that the bubbles are working well. They like having breaks and lunches on their own, in their own year group. They like the fact that they're not having to mix with older or younger students. And they feel that during the school day that they are reasonably well separated from other year groups. In terms of Grumble, next slide please. Students said that not all students were wearing masks, and that gave them some concern. They were concerned about social distancing at the end and at the start of the school day. So I'll take those 2 points to begin with. There has been a change in our messaging around face masks. We saw lots of children wearing face masks on day 1 and noticed, remember this feedback was taken on day 4, and we noticed over the 2 or 3 days that less and less students were wearing those face masks, and that's why I sent you the text message to say that now we were insisting on face masks. And we have a situation at the moment where we've got parents who are on both ends of the spectrum. There are some parents who are not wanting their children to wear face masks, and other parents who are expecting children who don't wear face masks to be excluded from school. So it is, you know, a wide-ranging views that parents have around face masks. At this moment in time, we are working with families to get as many students as possible to wear those face masks. So it is an improving picture. Day by day, it's an improving picture. And these are new habits, these are new ways of working, and we understand in particular for the younger students, it is harder for them to adopt those new habits and those routines than the older students. There is constant reminders of teachers at the end of the lesson and also on corridors to get children to wear those face masks. And it is early days, but it is also work in progress as well. Children also talked about the starts and ends of school, and there is a heavier presence of senior team. You will have seen at the start of the school day, at the front of school, year 8s and year 9s are being separated, year 11s are being sent to the back of the school, to their entrance. It's much better than what it was on day 1 and day 2, and that's as a result of our observations and also the feedback from students as well. The top gate, where we've got the year 7s arriving early and the year 10s arriving a bit later, what I would say to parents to help us manage the starts and the finishes of school is to say that encourage your children to come at the time that we've asked them to attend school, because when they come too early, we do get those gatherings, and that causes some concern for some students, and it causes some concern for parents as well. On the whole, it is working much better as time progresses, and we're continuing to be vigilant, and we're continuing to deal with issues as they arise. Some children, some of the feedback that they gave us, they don't like being escorted. Some of those, because there is restricted movement now, and all movement across the building is managed, and that's not the case in all schools, I know. And some schools are operating very much in the way that they were operating pre-lockdown, but we have got a system where all movement is managed. So some students grumbled the fact that they didn't like the fact that some of those freedoms were taken away from them, but we're going to continue with that system. Also, they remarked on the fact that because our teachers have to stay at the front of the class and have to maintain a 2-metre distance, they didn't like the fact that the teachers couldn't look at their work. So that is also work in progress, and there are ways that children can show their work to their teachers whilst maintaining that social distancing. They commented on the fact that the classrooms were cold because windows and doors are open, and they are having to be open because we need to ensure that our classrooms are well ventilated, and also as a result of that, they're saying that the starts of lessons are noisy and at times they can hear the teacher next door if they're playing a video and the volume is high, and that's distracting as well. So we're having to manage all of those new ways of working, and it is yet they're not all resolved, but we're working very hard to ensure that it is the best it can possibly be under the circumstances that we're working in. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know in some households there's more anxiety than in others, and that's largely to do with the vulnerability of families in terms of that return to school. And with children returning to school, we are all having to, and people having to go back to work. We're having to learn to live with COVID, make adjustments and adaptations to our daily lives, and school is no different. But it's a constantly changing picture. Our school systems, remember, that we have introduced are not tried and tested, and they're being modified as we work with them and we see that something is not right, we will tweak them. But it's under constant review. Our policies are under constant review relating to COVID. We don't work in isolation. Remember, we are not public health specialists or experts, but we do work closely with Public Health Sheffield, and we have regular contact with them, and we have regular contact with Public Health England as well. But we are having to manage risk. You are having to manage risk in your homes, in your place of work. Schools are no different. But as well as manage risk, we are having to minimise risks. And I know for some of you, it doesn't go far enough, but please be assured that we are following all of the guidelines that we have been given, both by Public Health and also by the Department for Education as well. Next slide, please. The Sheffield picture, I thought I'd take a moment to talk about the Sheffield picture. Well, things have changed very rapidly. You'll know, just like the national picture, the community transmissions are on the increase. Sheffield is now, as of the weekend, it is now on the government watch list. So the positive cases you will have read in the news, the local press, there have been positive cases across a number of Sheffield schools, and as a result some schools have sent whole year groups home to self-isolate, and others have sent clusters. I can confirm that we've had 2 positive cases since the start of term at Meadowhead. Both of those cases are not related. Both of those cases, both children developed symptoms whilst they were self-isolating, and they were self-isolating because their parents had been tested positive. So there have been 2 cases, and as and when those cases arise, it is the contacts of those cases that we will communicate with, and we will inform parents of those contacts and not all families. Okay, and that's really important. So where we have positive cases that are school transmissions, and we haven't had any of those, then we will need to inform a wider group of parents, and it may be in those cases that all parents are informed. So all schools are having to deal with those cases in line with public health expectations, and also in the context that they're working in. I am really pleased to say that the cases that we've had isn't as a result of school infection and school transmission. It was household transmission, and that's the vast majority of cases that we've seen, both nationally and locally as well. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd take an opportunity to go through the preventative measures that we have put in place. And these are the measures that all schools are required, and the first 4 points on the screen are compulsory, and 5 less so, and 6 only when necessary. So let me talk you through the first point. I know as a parent, it's very, very difficult. You wake up in the morning, your child has a sniffle, and you send them to school. When they are in school, and if we believe that your child is showing symptoms of COVID, then unfortunately we're going to have to make contact with you. We cannot take that risk of having somebody potentially who is infectious in school. And I know parents are very frustrated when they get that phone call, but we say to all parents, please do not send your child if they are showing those COVID symptoms, temperature, that persistent cough, loss of taste or smell. You know those symptoms very well, and I know it's frustrating. And what we're saying to parents is, if we believe if the child is in school and a member of staff has seen that they are coughing, or they present themselves as having a temperature, we're going to have to send them home. But what I would say to you is, if you wake up and your child is showing those symptoms, please do not send them in school. And we want to minimise that risk of infection. Obviously, if there is somebody in the household who does have those symptoms, what we're seeing at the moment is parents are keeping their children at home just in case, and they're getting themselves tested, and they do not attend. And by working together, we can minimise risk. Number 2, on arrival to school and also on arrival to every lesson, children are having to sanitise their hands, and that's working well now. In terms of in the classroom there is PPE if it's needed, and there is also lidded bins for all tissues. So we are having to make sure that there is good hygiene practice in place. There is enhanced cleaning throughout the school day. At the end of the school day, children who use keyboards, remember our IT suites are used by multiple year groups. Keyboards are wiped clean with anti-virus wipes, and that's happening at the end of each lesson. Also, when year groups off the home corridor are being used by another year group, if one classroom is being used by more than one year group, it is cleaned before the next year group is using it. So there's lots of enhanced cleaning that's taking place, and our support staff are working incredibly hard to ensure that classrooms are cleaned before lessons, and also throughout the day, and those high contact places, door handles, handrails are being cleaned throughout the day as well. Number 5, social distancing. I know this causes some anxiety among some parents. When you have 1,800 children, it's incredibly hard to socially distance in the school building. And the social distancing that is expected in schools is staff and students. So there is that 2-metre distance. And the reason for that is that the school can remain open for as many students as possible. When you have classes of 30, classes of 25, they are not going to socially distance in the classroom. They're sat next to each other. So all classrooms have very defined seating plans. all of those seating plans are rigorously adhered to, because we use those for contact tracing if there is a case, and we will use those if there is a case to identify those that need to self-isolate after a positive case. On the corridors are busy corridors. We've got 330 students. There is movement in years 9, 10 and 11. 7s and 8s are largely taught in their form groups, but there is little movement there, and that is to very specialist areas and to PE. At lesson changeover, it is busy on our corridors, and there is crisscrossing, children going to their corridors and also waiting to be picked up to go off their corridors. And on those corridors, increasingly we're seeing children wearing face masks, and that, as I said previously, that picture is improving. In terms of social areas, we're encouraging children to spend their breaks and lunch times outside, but children do sit next to each other in the hall or in the cafe, and they are not socially distancing there, and that's due to the numbers. So, and it is the same in most schools. It's the same in all schools. That social distancing is largely in schools between teachers, members of staff and children. We do have to wear PPE, especially where we're dealing with children who with potential symptoms, and we're doing that to ensure that all measures are being put in place to minimise that spread of infection. Next slide, please. I've talked about face masks already, but I'll expand a bit more on that. Public Health Sheffield are now advising that staff and students should wear face masks on corridors, as I've said, and inside communal areas, not outside. So you won't, if you are watching children come out of the school building, they are likely not to wear face masks on the street as they come outside. It is not yet mandatory in Sheffield schools. I believe it will be soon, due to us being put on the government watch list, Sheffield being put on the government watch list, but it is an improving picture. I know for some we're not moving fast enough, and we're working with those families who are adamant that their child isn't to wear a face mask for medical reasons or for other reasons, and we're working with those families. What we're seeing is that when children wear the face mask, they tend to behave in a better way, in a safer way, and that's pleasing to see. And what we are going to be doing, and we have been doing, is where children are not taking it seriously, we're going to be having those conversations with their parents as well. But we do need to work collectively to keep each other safe, and I know that this is a really important matter for very many of you, and please be patient with us. And there's massive improvement in the short space of time that children have returned to school, but there is still some further work to be done here. Next slide, please. Our response to any infection, obviously the test and trace kicks in. We manage all cases in close contact with public health and the local health protection team. And as I said previously, if there are students who test positive, their contacts will be traced, and children will be sent home to self-isolate, and they will be sent home to self-isolate for 14 days, and it is from the onset of those symptoms, the last contact they had with the child. And parents of those students will be notified. Okay, so we do not expect a global letter informing of all positive cases. It will only be on a need to know basis unless there is a school in transmission and we are having to send whole year groups home. Next slide, please. What has let us down, and you'll know, you'll sense my frustration here, is the testing. And that is impacting massively in schools. So when we are sending children home with suspected symptoms, we're saying to parents, you need to get your child tested. And quite rightly, parents are saying, I can't get a test. And we're saying, well, you're just going to have to wait until you can, and your child is not to return. Similarly, the same is for our staff members when their children are showing symptoms, and that has an impact on the smooth running of the school. So as yet, we have managed it, and we continue to manage it, but please be assured that we have alerted. I wrote to our local MP to let them know that how it was impacting, and you'll see it in the media as well. Last night, I was informed that some of the local testing centres, the walk-in centres, as you can see on the screen, are no longer drop-in or walk-in, and it's by appointment only. And that is a big frustration for us, but it's not in my hands and it's not in your hands, and we're going to have to wait to see, and hopefully that picture will improve. And I believe there are some announcements in today's news that we're learning that schools are going to be prioritised alongside the NHS and social care as well. I hope that is not going to be a barrier as we move forward, because it is having an impact on your lives, especially when you're having to look after children at home and you can't send them to school, and also in the future potentially staff numbers as well. Next slide, please. The other changes that I need to alert you to are that we are having to do quite a few things differently. So normally in the autumn term, we would have Year 6 open evening where we would have community, prospective parents for both Year 6 and Year 12, the sixth form coming in the autumn term to have a look around school and to meet with key staff and staff members. That cannot happen, for obvious reasons. So we're going to have to do things virtually, and also that includes parents' evenings. So the first parents' evening that we have got in the school calendar is a Year 7 settling in evening, and you will get, Year 7 parents will get information as to how those meetings will be conducted in a few weeks' time. But we are not able to have parents in the school building under the current situation, and you'll understand why. Also, we're having to limit our visitors in school, and we're saying to parents, only come into school by appointment, or if we ask you to come in to pick up your child. In addition to what is on the screen, extracurricular, some of you have asked about our extracurricular provision. At this moment in time, we just need to make sure that the school day is our priority. We need to prioritise that, and also the expectation is that early October we will look to offer extracurricular, and in particular I know our examination groups, our students are asking for after school sessions, but at this moment in time, whilst infection rates are on the increase, what we're saying is that we can't facilitate that, and especially whilst we're having difficulties with testing as well. So be patient with us. For now, it's the school day that is our priority. Next slide, please. I will also ask parents to have the conversations. We're having those conversations with children as well about behaviour and friendships outside of school hours, and we would encourage parents to reiterate the importance of the six, gatherings of six, and making sure that their social bubbles, their networks, their friendship groups are as tight as they can possibly be, so that they are not picking up infection from a wide range of people. And again, this is about minimising both community transmission and school transmission and across those friendship groups. So it's please, can you have those conversations? And there are, as you know, there are social restrictions now to gatherings of 6 or below, and that's for adults and children, but it would be really helpful if you could have those conversations with your children. Next slide, please. Remote learning. So the remote learning is available, and it is only available for those children that self-isolate, that are self-isolating. So, and children are required to self-isolate if they, for 14 days, if one of their household members has tested positive, and or if they have been contact traced. If you decide to keep your child home, then that is an unauthorised absence, and we will not be setting your child work, and we will be working with you to get your child back into school. But remote learning, and this is an area that we do need to do some further work on in improving our systems, because it changes on a day-by-day basis, and teachers are having to adapt to a routine. So what they have been told is, what I've asked my teachers to do is, when they are planning work for their class in school, to look at their registers to see who is self-isolating, and to set work for those children that are self-isolating, as well as planning the work for those children that are in the classroom. And so please be patient with us. I know there is further work to be done here. Nobody anticipated the numbers of self-isolation to have grown so rapidly at the start of this term, but all work will be set using class charts. Our year 7s who haven't been used to using class charts have all had those lessons and have been taught how to use class charts in their ICT lessons. That was a priority that the ICT team were given, and also for those children that are having to self-isolate, and we will ask the question whether they have the facilities to do remote learning, whether they have Wi-Fi and whether they have a laptop in school, and we ask parents to notify us if that is going to be an issue, and that is on the letter that they're given. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's really that is the update that I wanted to give you around the start of the academic year. And how things are currently working. Remember, things are very new to everybody, new to the children, new to the staff. A lot of preparatory work was done. There has been some unexpected obstacles and barriers, but we're working through those. And thank you to parents for your supportive messages. And I've had lots of different conversations with parents. All your feedback is valid feedback. Even when you're dissatisfied, it is helpful feedback. And when you pick up the phone or you email me, we've tried to contact you as quickly as possible. I expect that there will be some questions. Sarah, are there any questions that have been raised by parents?
Yeah, we have got a few questions. I'll work through those as best I can. first question is, what is the plan for children with SEN needs?
Okay, so well, what is in place already for children with SEN needs is that the SEND department are working differently with them. As you are aware, there are very few lessons where we can have teaching assistants in the classroom. So we're monitoring that situation very closely. The TAs are being deployed to do intervention with the children who require that additional support. And the information around children's SEND, the profiles have been updated. So we're monitoring that very closely. If you believe that your child isn't getting the support that they need, then you should make contact with the SEND team. But the challenges are for teachers now are that in year 7 and year 8, they're teaching mixed ability. We're going to be doing some observations and looking at books in the very near future to see whether or not learning is scaffolded. We'll take feedback from children again about their learning to see whether work is too easy or whether work is too difficult, and take some feedback from staff as well. The vast majority of support for SEND at the moment is around intervention, and that is to do with speech and language, or it might be to do with literacy, and where the needs can be met through quality first teaching, that responsibility falls within the classroom teacher. But please do raise those questions and concerns with our SENCO, Kate Miller, or her team as soon as they arise.
Okay, next questions are around what measures have been put in place to reassure pupils around their anxieties about returning to school, and also reassure pupils that children sent home to isolate is purely precautionary.
Okay, so before the children are sent home, I spoke to them yesterday and I went through exactly that message, that they didn't need to worry, and in most cases they won't have been infected, but it was a preventative measure. So children are not just simply sent home without that discussion. They were spoken to in the hall, and that also happened the previous day as well. So on both cases, when we've had the positive cases, that conversation has been had. The year teams are aware of the children that have been anxious about their return to school, and if they are not, then you must pick up the phone and let them know. But they are working with those individual children. If you have continuing concerns, then please do speak to the year office, and we will continue to provide that additional support. At the start of the academic year, during study time, our programme in the morning was around recovery, and some of that was around mental health as well, and lots of those support. Children were given some coping mechanisms, and also given some ideas as to where they can access additional support. It's also good to see that our school pastors are back with us, and they are also providing additional support for students who are feeling incredibly anxious about their return to school as well. So the whole range of support systems in school. But if you feel that your child isn't getting better, we're not managing to alleviate some of those anxieties, then let us know. Let us know.
Okay, a question around the confirmed cases and why not all year 11s have been sent home.
Okay, as I said, they were not connected, and that decision was made with public health guidance. Both cases, their parents were tested positive. They were both self-isolating. During that self-isolation period, that's when they became infectious. That's when they showed symptoms, and that subsequently were tested positive. So they were not connected, and that's why children weren't sent home en masse.
Next question is around plans for winter and ventilation in rooms and students getting cold, and also on days when they may be in their PE kits in the winter. Absolutely.
We will take guidance from Public Health. The heating isn't on at the moment, but it will be on in the winter. The schools, the classrooms will continue to remain ventilated. It may be that following guidance that we don't have to have all windows open, but definitely children will be able to wear their coats if they need to. I expect that we won't be seeing children wearing shorts to school, that they will be wearing more sensible joggers or leggings to school on PE days, but we will take further guidance from Public Health around temperature in classrooms and how ventilated they need to be, because actually having the doors open as well is causing, as you've heard from the student feedback, is disrupting learning. So it's whether or not we can modify some of those measures, and we've taken it to the extreme actually, and it says, you know, classrooms are well ventilated. You know, what does that mean? Does it mean all windows? Does it mean one window? But I'll go back to Public Health to ask that question, because I envisage, as you do, that is going to be an issue for us and students. Okay.
There have also been some questions around school buses and arrival times and siblings that would need to arrive at different times, and how that will work.
So there's two things to do with school buses. If the bus is a school bus, they are not required to socially distance on the bus. They are required to wear a face mask, but they're not required to socially distance. If it's a bus that is used by the public, then they are required to socially distance on the bus. So the decisions that parents have to make have already been made around their journey to school. And if you'd watched the video that we uploaded on our website, the Greg Fell video around return to school, his message was, the lead from Public Health Sheffield was, you know, where possible, children should walk or cycle to school. I know that's not always possible. So if it is a persistent issue, I haven't noticed that it's a persistent issue, but then we're just going to have to somehow manage that. At this moment in time, I haven't seen that the same group of children are being persistently late in the mornings. In fact, punctuality is better than it has been previously in the mornings. But I expect that some of those routines and journeys to school have already been established. So I'm a bit confused what the question is really asking me.
I think the question is around school buses not being in line with the arrival times for some year groups coming into school.
Okay, so, and are they saying it's too, do we know what, we'll have a look at the times then. Well, I think what we'll do is I've got the bus timetables. We'll have a look to see what's not in sync, but because I can't really comment further than that right now, but we'll see where that is an issue, and maybe you can through the messaging facility here, perhaps write what particular bus it is to give us some help as to what the issue is. Okay.
Okay, some questions around face masks and what is being done to enforce staff and students wearing face masks, and also if school will provide a face mask if a student doesn't have one.
We've provided many students with face masks since the start of term. The staff are required to wear a face mask on busy corridors. If there's nobody else around, you know, sometimes I walk the school and there's nobody in the rostling, I won't necessarily wear a face mask then, but on lesson changeover, staff are wearing face masks. At lunch times, staff are wearing face masks. Sometimes outside, you may see me not wearing a face mask because there's nobody around me. Where social distancing is maintained, staff won't be wearing face masks, as in classrooms. We will continue, as I've said already, at risk of repeating myself, you know, we will continue to work with those families where it is an issue for them. And we are hoping very quickly that 100% of our students will be wearing face masks. And as I said earlier, I expect it will be mandatory in the very near future, and that it will be a legal requirement as a result of us being on that watch list. Yes.
Can I just add something on the face masks? There was another. It was only one question about it, but there was a concern from a parent that we were reissuing the same face masks to different students. So I'd just like to clarify that's absolutely not the case. We have had a donation of newly made fabric face masks that are washable, and we have given those to students. We haven't returned any back and handed them to a different student.
Yeah. So another question.
Okay, yeah, so a few questions around remote learning and how that will work, particularly around in the absence of testing, if parents aren't able to get tested, will students still be able to access remote learning in that situation whilst they're waiting for a test result?
Okay, so if your child has been sent home with symptoms, if they are sent home, it's likely that they're not well to be in. It's because they're not well. So in that case, what we're saying is your child is ill. But if you believe that when they're at home and waiting for a test, they are well enough to do work, then obviously we will set home work for them. So yes, there will be work there for children to complete in that particular case. But if your child is ill, because they're at home and they're awaiting a test, obviously the expectation won't be for them to complete work.
Okay, some questions around Year 11's plans and information around mock GCSEs, plans for catch-up and what the plans for exams are for Year 11.
Okay, so I will leave those questions to be answered by the head of year. So for all year groups, bar Year 12, because that was discussed yesterday in the virtual meeting, all year groups, all heads of year will have done a recorded message for the priorities for that year group. And for Year 11, it goes through Mr. Hill's presentation, goes through GCSEs, it goes through the assessments, the mock exams and intervention as well. The catch-up programme isn't expected to be put in place until after October half term. And as I said, all of the study sessions that ordinarily we would have put in place very early on in the autumn term, we're holding back. We're holding back so that it doesn't pose an additional problem in terms of contact tracing. So we want to keep the school open for all students and minimise risks, especially at a time where testing is an issue locally and what we don't want is children having to spend long periods of at home unnecessarily. So at this moment in time, the catch-up that is needed, I know it's needed, and it will be a concern for you, will not take place until after October half term. If it is catch-up that is going to be put in place after school. We do have some plans to do some work during the school day with certain students, but we're in the process of having one-to-one year 11 reviews, and we're gathering information about children's experiences and learning and their anxieties about GCSEs, and on the back of that we will put in place some interventions during the school day as well.
Okay, there was also a similar question around year 13, so I imagine
it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same for year 13.
Another question around online learning and how students will be able to get feedback on that, and how online learning could be used for mixed ability students and challenging those more able students.
Okay, so yes, absolutely, that is a challenge. So in terms of feedback, so if your child goes into self-isolation, they're told that to access work through class charts, the messaging function is still live, and they can message their teachers if they have concerns about the work or any questions about the work. They're asked to upload the completed work as they did previously, and where teachers are teaching mixed ability, they're going to have to do that. It is going to be a more challenging job to do that, but they'll know exactly which students are self-isolating. They'll know how to pitch the work for those students when it's a mixed ability setting.
Okay, also another question around leaving school at the end of the day, and a comment around year groups being separated during the day, but bubbles mix at the end of the day when they're let out of school.
Well, I mean, that is the case on school buses. You know, school buses don't have just one year group. They have multiple year groups on the school bus. Their walk to school, their walk home, you know, it's really hard. But what we do know is that the risk outside is lower than what it is inside, and it's hard to manage. We, again, remember maintaining social distancing where possible. And what I will be saying to children tomorrow is at the end of the school day, they need to move quickly and not to wait for friends, but in other year groups, they need to separate. We do have a slight staggered start, and it seems to be going well for certain year groups, but other year groups, it's hard when you are moving towards one building, when you've got 1,800 children all going in the one direction, and it's something that I would ask parents to support us with that, and we'll continue to give children that message to disperse as quickly as possible, because it does, I know it's causing parents concern.
Okay, I'm just quickly going through the last questions that have come up. A couple of questions around how long self-isolation is needed to be done for, especially if you can't access a test. How long do students need to remain off school?
So if they are suspected, if they've got suspected symptoms, then it is 14 days from the onset of those symptoms. I'm hoping that it doesn't take 14 days to get a test to know whether or not those symptoms are COVID or not. So I'm hoping that, you know, that testing is going to be more available, readily available, than what it has been in the last few days. But if it was a desperate situation that a test wasn't available, it is according to NHS guidelines, it is 14 days from the onset of those symptoms.
Okay, I think this is probably the last question. In cases where parents believe the risk is too great to send children to school, why is home learning not set for those students, and could it be done?
Could you repeat that again, please, Sarah?
Sorry, yeah. So if a parent believes that the risk is too great to send children to school, can home learning be set for those students?
No, unless your child is shielding and is clinically vulnerable, and you've been told by a consultant, a doctor, that that is the case, and there are very few cases of those, your child is required to attend school. We will work with families to alleviate some of those anxieties, but all children are required to attend school. I'd like to go back to my previous question, and I'm looking at Gary actually on the screen. So was the question around a child with suspected symptoms?
I was just thinking through that.
It is 10 days. If you are tested positive, it is 10 days isolation.
Yes, that's right. I think there are a number of scenarios, aren't there? So obviously the students we're sending home because of contact with someone, we're giving a very definite date in the letter we send home, and that will be 14 days from the last time they had contact with that person. Again, that period of 14 days applies if a member of your household has had symptoms or a positive test. So it does vary depending on the circumstances, and it's hard to sort of give a definite answer as to what the isolation period is, because it does depend on your circumstances. Can I say there was a little bit of a follow-up from a question about distancing in certain areas. So there was I think you did answer things about lunchtime and break time. Can we just make it really clear to the parents that although we can't maintain social distancing at lunchtime break time, they are in their year group bubbles. They don't have interaction with other year groups during that time.
Any other questions, Sarah?
Just final one around whether any live teaching will be provided when children are in self-isolation.
Well, that's really difficult to do because those teachers have got to teach the classes in the school. Where we have been able to provide live teaching has been when a teacher has self-isolated, and that has been with a sixth form group. So where we can, we will. Where it's judged that the better way of teaching the group is in a different way. If a teacher is self-isolating, then they will be required to set cover for the classes that are in the building. But for children that are self-isolating, if it is for 14 days or whether it's 10 days, we will not provide live teaching, because those teachers are teaching the classes in the building. Is that the last one?
I think that is the last question that wouldn't otherwise be answered by the videos that will be done by the heads of year.
Okay, all right. So my final slide is some takeaway messages for you. So each head of year has produced a recorded message, and those are some very specific priorities and things that you need to know about the year group. And they are recorded messages. There won't be a facility to ask questions, but you could always email questions if you had any follow-up questions. They will be available, and we'll send a link to parents, the relevant year group link to parents by the end of Friday. The other thing to bring to your attention is that the risk assessment, the school risk assessment that was on the website in July, it is now updated with the latest guidance and also any changes from a national level as well. So that is available for all parents should you want to read that, and Mr. Bragg has very kindly highlighted the changes so you don't have to read all of it because you will have read it previously as well. So that brings us to the end of this meeting. Thank you to all of our parents. I know these are very, very challenging circumstances that we're working in under, but your children are well looked after in school, and all of the measures that are required of schools and above that we have put in place. Our staff are working incredibly hard to keep your children safe, but some of the systems I know are not fully up and running at the level that we would want them to be, especially around the work, home learning. We need to do some further work with that. So I thank you for your patience. I thank you for your continued support, and I wish you well and look forward to our next conversation together. Thank you everybody for joining us.